Now what?
Now you can start talking.
These are stories from my childhood and about some of the people in my childhood that I remember, but we don't know very much about them. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I know about my father's family. When Auntie June and I were young, maybe 9, 11, we used to go to the farm for a summer holiday for a couple of weeks. The name of the farm was Jebb's Farm, and it was near Ford in Shropshire, not far from Shrewsbury. And we do not know the relationship between Jebb's and our family, but Mrs. Jebb was a widow, and she had Jack and Bill, and she had 2 daughters at home too. Maybe Auntie June can remember their names. And we had no idea of who they were, whether they were cousins of my father, but we stayed there for 2 or 3 weeks in the summer, and Mrs. Jebb always went to the market in Shrewsbury once a week, and she had this large wicker basket, and there would always be a snowy white cloth in the basket, and she would have maybe 2 or 3 chickens that she had raised and killed and plucked and cleaned the inside, and they would be arranged very nicely in this basket, and then she would have eggs and butter, and these were all made on the farm. And we would, when it was all ready, with a nice white cloth tied over the top, we would walk with Mrs. Jebb down to where the country bus would pick us up and drive us into Shrewsbury and drop us off close to where the market was. It was an enclosed market, and each person who sold at the market had their own spot, and we would wander around the market while Mrs. Jebb sold her chickens and her eggs and butter. And sometimes we'd go and wander around in Shrewsbury a little bit, but not very far, so we didn't get lost. And then when it was getting close to time, and there was always a clock chiming in the Shrewsbury square to tell us the time, we'd make sure we got back in time to get back with Mrs. Jebb on the bus to take us back to the farm. And to this day, we do not know who the Jebbs were, if they were connected to us in any way. And there's other history too. There was a hotel in Shrewsbury called the Queen's Arms, and it was owned by a family named Stringer. And they were also somebody connected with my father. And we used to go over there sometimes, and they had a daughter named Mary, who was somewhere around my age, or between my sister Betty and me. And Mrs. Stringer died, and Mr. Stringer sent his daughter Mary to live with our family because the hotel was no place for a motherless girl. And she lived with our family for some time. And nobody ever told us anything. We just accepted, oh, well, we have another sister. And then her father remarried, and she was sent back to Shrewsbury to live with her father and her new stepmother. And to this day, we do not know who the Stringers were and how they were related, if they were related. There's a lot of things that we do not know about our family. So that's the story for today.
One last note, what happened to Mrs. Jebb and Mr. Jebb?
Well, Mrs. Jebb, during World War II, well, we never knew Mr. Jebb. Mr. Jebb died before we were ever in the picture. But at the beginning, when World War II started, and we in Wallasey were being bombed quite heavily, Auntie June and Uncle Ted, who were quite young, well, June was 13 and Ted must have been 8. And they were sent to live on the farm with Jebbs, where it was much safer and away from the bombing. And they stayed with them for quite some time. And I remember going on the train from Liverpool to Shrewsbury and then taking a bus out to the farm to see them. Well, I must have been 16. I wasn't very old. But anyway, I remember my brother Ted, his hair was so long because they'd been on the farm and nobody had taken him to have his hair cut. And I remember borrowing scissors from Mrs. Jebb and cutting his hair, and what a mess. Poor Ted. He had a real pudding bowl haircut.
Did he have curls like you?
No, he didn't. But anyway, he survived my haircut. And they went to the village school, which was a real little village Church of England school. And then, not too long after that, the authorities decided that all children below the age of 16 should be officially evacuated from Wallasey because of the bombing. So because they were already down there in Shrewsbury, they were changed to homes, I think it was around Oswestry, and they were put in homes there with people who had no choice. They had to take evacuees if they had bedrooms. And they stayed there until Auntie June came back when I think she was 15 or 16, and I think Ted did too, and then he was sent away to boarding school. But that's the story from Shropshire.
That's really wonderful.
And that's the end of it for today.
You want to touch the button? Thanks, Mom.
This?
Yeah.